David Tillman, also known as Psychic Dave, began giving readings as a teenager when his mother bought him his first deck of tarot cards more than 40 years ago. Since then, he's pursued intensive instruction in various modalities and doctrines, which allows him to connect to his clients more easily. Be sure to check out his full bio in the description below. In this conversation, we talk about what life was like growing up Catholic and psychic. He discusses his own personal encounters with the Virgin Mary and Jesus, his experience with Native American vision quests, miracles that have unfolded before his eyes, and some mind-blowing validation he's received from his clients after their sessions. We had such an amazing conversation. He's hysterical, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear this one. Enjoy the conversation. Here's David. All right. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, David, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm just so fascinated by this world that you live in, and I've just got so many questions.
Well, I hope I have lots of answers for you. If not, I will just BS some.
Awesome. So thanks for joining me from Texas, right? You're in Dallas?
Yes, I am in Dallas, and believe it or not, loving it in Texas.
And I'm from Texas. I love Texas.
Oh, did you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So many wonderful people here. We've made so many lovely friends.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm going to be going back in for Memorial Day weekend.
Now, sir, are you from Austin area? Is that right?
Yes, I was born. I was born in Houston, and I went to UT Austin, and that's where I graduated from.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we live in Dallas now, and we went out for a walk earlier, and of course ran into different neighbors, and everybody chit chats, and very different than the neighborhood I had in LA. Not that the people were bad, but just Texans are friendly.
Absolutely, they are good people. Good people.
Good people. Yes.
What was life like growing up for you? I'm just curious if you were raised with any religion or any kind of spiritual background.
Sure. So I was raised Catholic, and I was an altar boy. And I guess one would say that I'm still recovering from being raised Catholic. But I was very fortunate in that my mom was very spiritually oriented. She had actually converted to Catholicism, but she was a big believer in Edgar Cayce. So from the time that I can remember, she was telling me that my soul was from Atlantis, and that, and she used to play psychic games with me because she noticed that I would know who was on the phone, or that, oh, grandma's going to stop by. I'm like, no, she's not. No, she's going to stop by because, in the South, people just drop by. Right. And then, then my grandmother would show up. So she used to play this game. It's called Husker Du. I don't even know if they have it anymore, but it's like a card game where you look for certain symbols and you try to find the second symbol, but all the cards are laying face down. So she was like, now pick all the kings, pick all the queens, show me the aces, and I would pick them out for her. So She was really excited about this ability.
Okay, so you were raised Catholic, but your mom was a fan of Edgar Cayce, but she was Catholic.
Yes.
Okay, can you explain who Edgar Cayce is? Because I know I've heard of Edgar Cayce, but
he was like a spiritualist kind of guy from the I want to say the 20s and 30s and 40s, and like through that time period. And he was really into past lives and spiritual connections and the other side and all of those things. So during the 60s, I think, is when he wrote a lot of books that kind of promoted that, that there is a world beyond what we see with our, five senses. So she was a big fan. I have to admit that I've not read any of his stuff. I don't know why. Maybe one of these days.
He was a medium, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did he do like physical mediumship? Was he channeling through his body, or was he one of those?
I don't know for real or not. I've only had experiences with Abraham in terms of somebody who channels, or, do you know who Abraham is?
Yeah.
Abraham
Esther Hicks. Yeah.
Yes. Esther Hicks. Yeah. So, that's 1,000 channeled entities, coming through one person. So he was probably like that, because that does not feel wrong to say, because he certainly had a lot of wisdom that he was sharing with people. And, when I first came to San Francisco years ago, it felt like home. And I happened to mention to my mom, like, oh, God, I love San Francisco. It felt like home. She goes, oh, well, that's because the tower, the pyramid made you feel like you were back home in Atlantis. And my sister remembers saying to my mom, or my sister said to my mom, like, oh, tell me about my life in Atlantis. Oh, you weren't from Atlantis.
Okay, so let's go back to that, because I'm curious. So your mom, she was a fan of Edgar Cayce. Is it because she saw your abilities when you were young? Like you started developing these abilities at a certain age?
I don't know which came first. If she
Right.
noticed those and then started reading, or if it was something that she was interested in and then found some of her own. Because certainly all moms have a certain intuition, right?
Mm.
They can sense what's going on with their kids, right? So I don't know if that's how it first began. I just know how she ended up, working with me on it. And she actually got my first deck of tarot cards too when I was like 11 or 12. So I started reading the tarot then, and then started getting visitations, which freaked me out totally. I mean, like stuff shaking on the shelves, falling off, bed shaking. Oh my God, it was terrifying, initially, I have to say. But by the time 13, 14 years old is when I started getting visitations. And initially, I thought I was just dreaming it, right?
Right.
But then stuff would, fall off the shelf. And the one night that the bed was shaking,
No
it was,
way.
yeah, it was truly shaking. And now, granted, I have a vivid imagination, right? But I
Right.
was so freaked out that I actually went and got in bed with my parents as like a 15-year-old because I was so freaked out about the bed shaking.
What did they say?
Well, my dad was like, "Wah." My mom was like, well, let's figure out who it is. you know?
So they weren't at any point like, you need to stop messing with the tarot cards. They were just like, were they fully support? Your mom sounded like she was probably fully supportive. Was your dad supportive of you?
No, he was not. And
Okay.
so it was at that point that I stopped and like shut everything down, like did not pursue it, didn't think about it anymore, because that was such a freaky experience. And also, I had some other friends whose parents had been spiritualist kind of oriented, and then this for whatever happened, they started to believe it was Satan, that they were worried about me, that Satan was going to come and get me, and that sort of thing. So that's freaking me out. So flash forward, I studied theater to be an actor, and then I became a production designer to kind of make a living, while I could support my acting habit, right? But when I would design scenery, I don't know if how much you know about the concept here is, but basically you read the script and then you come in with your ideas to present to the director, and the director, talk about what you want to come up with it, right? So whenever I would have a meeting with any director, they're like, "Oh my God, it's like you were inside my head. It's exactly what I wanted. I never got any notes, you know."
Yeah.
Uh, and I didn't think anything about it because I thought, well, it's so obvious from the script, right? What it should
Mm.
be. And then I moved to San Francisco, worked for theater there. And when I decided to go to LA, my boss in San Francisco was like, well, who's going to know what I want before I know what I want? you know? I'm like, oh, huh, maybe there's something to this. And then an old girlfriend of mine, her mom said to her, and then she eventually told me, that she thought I was reading everybody's minds in the room because I would know the next thing that was happening or comment on it something before it happened.
Mm.
Um, so,
How old were you? How
that
old were you then when
uh,
that started happening?
that was like I was probably 17 or 18.
Okay, so
Uh,
you were still young. So around
I'm still
okay,
young,
so you had the bed shaking at 15 that freaked you out. You're like,
right?
okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn it off. And then around 17 you started noticing
The
these
mind reading
abilities, the
things,
mind
yeah,
reading things.
right. But again, I just thought it was again obvious,
Right. You
to
didn't know
whoever the
you were
right, anticipating things until Julia's mom said something about it, and then the other experiences, with their work was later in life, like in my early 20s through early 30s, was when that started stuff happening. Now, I did start studying Buddhism when I was in my mid 20s, chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So that started me on a journey of like studying different religious systems,
And
right?
what
To
is that
learn more
chant?
about.
What is that?
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It means devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect, according to the
Ooh.
voice. So it's voice vibration. So Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So I practiced that for like 10 or 11 years. And then I decided to study the Red Path, so Native American spirituality. And
Mm.
that's why I started studying that once I came to California. And started studying with the Cherokee shaman. And then I went to study with his teacher in New Mexico. And that's when some really crazy shit happened. Like,
I bet. Tell me about it.
oh my God. Okay, so I just remembered because I was telling my friend Rocco, you know Rocco.
Yeah, I know
Um,
Rocco.
yeah, so about levitating during a session with the shaman. And like literally, I was off the ground by just like this much, but I was levitating off the ground as I was seeing my home world. So it
Wait,
was just
what is a home world? What do you mean by
my home
that?
world, like where my soul came from.
No
Like,
way.
yeah, not all souls are here on come from planet Earth. The other ones
Mm.
come from different planets and stuff. But now we're on an Earth plane, so we're going to be thinking about everything from an Earth perspective, right?
Right.
So, but I get some of this. So I'm prefacing what I'm about to say. So it's they say that when you come to the Earth plane, it's like you're getting your PhD in developing your soul, because the Earth is a water world, and water represents emotions. And so emotions, as we know, play so much into everything that we do, right? Between what we would consider right and wrong. You know, we're angry about something or we're happy about something, right? So it's learning how to navigate emotions. So when you come here, it's because you really want to develop your soul, because you're going to be challenged more.
Mm.
So now in my home world, I know it sounds so freaky when you say it out loud. So in my home world, it's more like a water planet. But every time I say water, I always hear my guides go, "Not water." So like it was like a liquid or a plasma, and we lived in that, right? And the land was over there, but we lived in, because I was laying on my back and looking up at there were two suns and two or three moons as the day was going by. And I went just back down in. So I was breathing whatever the plasma is. So whatever it is, it's more of a world like that, which kind of made sense to me because I've always loved being in the water, but like underwater.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's being relaxed, sunken down in my pool and just kind of, holding my breath and chilling, right? So it feels very comforting to me. So anyway, having that experience with the Cherokee shaman, he said he had to like pull me back in. And so when I came back into my body, I like hit the ground.
That's
Uh,
wild.
it was
David,
totally wild.
so you're sitting there, you're in meditation, or you were meditating? Is that what's
Well,
happening?
I was meditating, but I was laying down, and he's doing all this drum work, and he's got incense going, and it's nothing more nefarious than incense
Mm-hmm.
going. But we're in the zone, right? And he is raising the vibration, raising it. So he had done a lot of Kundalini work with me to raise the Kundalini, right? So the Kundalini comes from the base of the spine and goes up through the crown chakra, right? So it goes to all
Right.
the 7 chakra points. But in this case, I was laying down and just off. It was weird because I could just feel it kind of rising. It's like my arms are rising, everything is getting lighter and lighter, and I can feel my back kind of coming off the thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sitting here, but this is, I'm in there for like a couple hours, right? So then it's like I suddenly feel like I think my butt's off the ground now. Like because I could feel the breeze completely underneath of me while in this meditative state. But in the meditative state, I'm, in my home world, right? And just swimming and just totally digging it. And then I feel this yank, right? Yank back down. And Tina said, "Oh, your soul was telling me, oh, I'm going to go ahead and stay." And he's like, "Oh no, I don't think that you're supposed to stay." Right? So yeah, it was that moment of like I could have left my body literally and left this meat suit here and gone back home, so to speak.
Whoa, can you
Um,
imagine? Like that's how you went. Can you imagine that's how you transitioned? You just levitated until you passed out and like, oh, there he went.
there he went. I know. I mean, it was really peaceful, but much better than some other ways to go, right? But
Wow.
yeah, so that was a pretty doggone amazing experience. Yeah.
So you know that you were, I mean, you felt what you felt, but as far as you levitating off the ground, he must have told you that you were actually but you felt yourself hit the ground is what you said, huh?
Yeah, I felt myself hit the ground, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I only got you a couple of inches up." But like, oh, could you do more? Because you're like, oh, I only
Yeah.
got you a couple of inches off the ground.
Sorry, we can only do 2 or 3 this time.
So yeah. So that
Wow.
was pretty amazing. And then I did a vision quest in the Native American tradition. So 3 days and 3 nights with no food or water out in the desert underneath of a tree, and that's an experience that was one amazing. Um, because every day this lizard would come to see me, and it would do the lizard dance. So I was like doing the lizard dance. So the idea is to get your vision right, to know what you're supposed to do with your life. So nearing I think it was on the second day, second or third day, this hummingbird came. So these are all going to be my power animals that are coming to me. So the hummingbird comes, and it flies around my head, okay, and it tells me. Now, granted, of several days with no food or water, right?
Yeah.
It tells me to climb the tree that night, and I would see a miracle. Okay, and I'm like, okay, live with this hummingbird. I'm ready for a miracle. So that night, I have a sleeping bag and basically a poncho in case it rains, right? Well, this storm starts rolling in like thunder and lightning. It's the desert, so it's Mexico, right? So I climb up in the tree like the hummingbird said to do, right? So I'm climbing up in the tree, and the wind is rocking, right? And I'm watching this storm go in. I'm like, holy shit, what am I going to do? I'm going to be drowning here. And then the storm split open, and it stormed past me on both sides and then came back together on the other side.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. So I got the cold chills here. Yeah. I saw a miracle. So it was so profound.
David, how many days into your journey were you, into your vision quest?
I want to say I think it was the the third night, so going in, or the second night going into the 3 nights. So the last night before I was going to be going back the next day. So it was at the end. So near the end, and I, still waiting to get my actual vision. So then I did get my vision that night.
That's wild. So this little hummingbird, it swirled around your head, and you said it communicated to you. I mean, I'm assuming telepathically. It probably didn't have like a voice,
right?
But yeah,
telepathically. Yeah,
it uploaded a message into your head. You're like, okay, got to go into this tree.
Yes.
And you didn't doubt it. You were like, I'm going to do this. I mean,
because it had come every morning. And so we had a thing, we had a thing out in the desert.
So the hummingbird was also every morning, and the lizard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like these things came every day.
Wow.
It was really weird. And so the lizard said that he was actually a bear. But if he came in bear form, that I would be scared and wouldn't be able to hear any of the messages that he had for me. So his message was about lizard represents being in the dream world and the physical world, between the two worlds, right? And so as a dreamer, and also on my vision quest, you would think you're at the dream world. But as I'm a Hollywood writer as well, so visionary of stories. But bear is about being introspective, right? And being able to take in things and think about stuff. And then certainly in the community, I'm a bear. so that all makes sense. So yeah. So I understood what they meant, when they came. So somebody else said that a real bear had come by them because they could smell it. And they were totally freaked out, thinking the bear was going to get them. So I don't know. My bear came in the shape of a lizard, so we were cool. We hung out because you don't leave the perimeter of the tree. So the shaman puts a circle of protection around the tree, so you can't cross it while you're there. So it's literally 3 days under this tree that had maybe a 20-foot circumference. that I had to walk around or be in, and you spend most of your time in meditation and prayer.
Wow. That's that's a lot. That's intense. And how old were you then?
I was in my early 30s. So I want to say 33 because of Jesus' birthday.
Mm.
Jesus' birthday to me is when people make significant changes in their lives, right? And so if you just chat people up and find out when they moved, had a baby, got married, did something
Hmm.
really significant,
Yep.
it's on or about age 33. So I call
Yeah.
it the Jesus birthday.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm thinking about mine. Mine at 33, I feel like I just discovered so much play and fun at 33. It was like this transition into Peter Pan mode.
Let's see, that can be a significant change, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just so much opened up for me. It was just, yeah, I get that. And that leads me to my next question. So, growing up Catholic, being raised Catholic, and having all of these experiences, obviously, it's a completely different perspective than the way that you were raised. What's your relationship like now with Jesus?
You know what? Jesus and I are tight. In my mind's eye, I see him, and
Mm.
we talk like you and I are talking. Okay.
Yeah.
So I went through this period where I became too empathic, to feeling everybody's emotions and things, right? But everything's feelings. So I was having a hard time being around grass being cut or trees being trimmed because I could feel them and what they
Oh,
were experiencing being
oh,
cut, right? And it was becoming overwhelming. Like I was getting to the point where I didn't feel like I could go outside because of just this oversensory thing. So I said, to my buddy Jesus, I'm like, I need some help here. I can't function in the physical world with all of this stuff. And so he did a prayer over me so that I could tone down the feelings and be able to open them up when they needed to be, like when I'm doing a session for somebody, and being able to shut it back down again. So he
mm,
told me about doing a prayer and how to kind of cleanse myself before starting. Like if you were to do a session with me, if you see me do it,
yeah.
you'll see me go like this. So I'm taking off any and all negative energies and kind of tossing them into the little orange fire next to me so that they dissipate. And then it's like opening the door, and I have this lovely little crown that I put on when I do a session
Oh,
that
cool.
that kind of delineates my world from where I was to where I'm going to be in the psychic world.
Oh,
Okay.
I like that. So it's
So
like
I
a
do all this.
physical representation of crossing into
Yes.
the other world.
Yes. Yeah. So I can
So
feel
it's
the
it's
physical sensations of it.
and then it's also creating an energetic boundary for you, huh?
Yes. Yes. Now, I also hang out a lot with the Virgin Mary, and she used to
Oh,
come all the time. And I would see her like a blue energy of her energy. So I knew when she was there. So I feel like I have a real close connection to the divine feminine. And I know that there was some pretty miraculous thing, and I'm sorry I can't remember right now. It's been like 20 years or so. Um, but I was lost someplace, and she kind of led me out of wherever it was because I like to go hiking and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, where the hell am I? Because I was just off in my own world thinking and stuff. Um, so, they're very much to me. Some people, did he really exist? I think he really exists. I think the Virgin Mary really existed, and their energies still exist, and their
hmm,
energies are such that they can be, they're multidimensional beings, so they can communicate with hundreds of millions of people at the same time, right? It doesn't just to that one. I have all of
right.
his attention, right?
Yeah, I mean, because time and space really only exists for us. So
Right,
these
right.
multi-dimensional beings are everywhere all at once. Yeah.
Yes.
So when Mary, Mother Mary, would come in for you, you felt like specifically her energy, like that it was
Oh
her.
yeah. Oh yeah.
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 Did
It's
she
a
ever
very
communicate to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah,
Finish
no,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
she did. She did. Oh, I'm trying to remember what this thing was. I was going through a heavy depression, and she came in, and I could feel her hands go on my face
Mm.
and whisper to me that everything was going to be okay. And that she would take this pain away. And it went away.
Oh.
It just dissipated. It was really miraculous. Like, if I can be honest with you and all of your people listening, feeling pretty suicidal, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the pain just went away. I trusted that she would take that pain away.
You were at rock bottom, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And were you praying? Were you surrendering? Were you in like full surrender, like that letting go when that happened?
Totally. I mean, it was one of those Jesus take the wheel moments, right? In my life. And I was out in the country someplace because I draw a lot of energy from being out in the woods and stuff, being from West Virginia. I love the outdoors and stuff. And I was laying down and kind of in the sun. And there was just something about it wasn't like a rose bush. It was some sort of flowering bush is where I felt like I saw her and thought I heard her say, lay down here. We'll take care of this.
Wow. And you felt her hands on your face.
Yes. Yes.
How beautiful. So after that, or while that happened, what were you experiencing in your body? What were you experiencing in your mind? Because imagine you were there. I'm imagining being there in that place where you just do not want to be here on this planet anymore. And then all of a sudden that's gone. I've had a mystical experience very, very similarly where like in an instant, everything was just one, like gone. All of the weight that I had been carrying was just gone. And I just experienced God's love and the love of the divine. Literally every cell of my body was taken over by this love. And I started crying, but it was happy crying, it was like this, I can't believe what I'm seeing, feeling, hearing right now in this moment. This is a miracle. And so I'm wondering what that was like for you in that moment.
It was, I could feel it all over my body. But one of the things that she was saying to me was, as she was holding my head, she was trying to get me to ground into my body. Like it was so heady, right? When you're in that depression, you're actually so heady, right? On the hamster wheel spinning, right? So I remember her saying, feel the sun on your face, feel the grass between your fingers, listen to the wind. Like she was activating all of my 5 senses, right? So that I could feel everything, feel her, and then had her say, now just let me take it. And it was like, I just felt this thing lift up and go away. It was really miraculous.
And it never came back?
No.
Wow.
Not to that depth. We've all had bad days, right? And stuff.
Right. We're human. We live on this planet. Yeah.
Right. We're in the meat suit. We're here to experience. Right.
Right. Right. But not to that level of depression.
No. I would often see her around people if they had a connection to the Virgin Mary in a reading and say, oh, well, the Virgin Mary's looking over your shoulder. She's here and listening to you. And 9 times out of 10, the person's like, oh my God, I talk to the Virgin Mary every day. Like, oh no, she's here. So she listens. So wow. They do have that ability to, I guess what I want to say is when people think or feel like they're in connection with her or Jesus, I think you are. From my personal experience.
I believe it. That's just so beautiful. And there's been like Fatima in Portugal, that whole experience. I believe that happened. Like something happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's all this, it's Shakespeare said it, with there are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. And there is, right? It's all energy. And it's how we perceive that energy. And if we're open to miracles, like miracles happen all the time. It's just like, do we trust and believe?
Right. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I know that's, you know, very a very intimate thing to share. Thank you. I'm
You're
sure
very welcome.
I'm sure there are listeners out there that will appreciate that. Um, so what are you doing now with these gifts that you have? Or how are you using them to help other people?
I still do sessions like 5 days a week. So I also work in the film business with Rocco, right? So I usually do a session before I start. I keep LA hours now that I live in Texas.
Mm,
So, starting in at like 9 a.m. LA time, right? But that's 11 a.m. Dallas time.
mm.
So in that window beforehand, I do sessions. And then in the evening after dinner, I'll do sessions with people. So I generally see anywhere from 30 to 45 people in a month, and still maintain another full-time job. So
Wow.
I have a lot of clients who are repeat people, and some people, depending on what they're going through, sometimes I'll do some life coaching with them. So we'll be meeting on a kind of a weekly basis. And um, I try to influence that into the writing that I do, even the educational stuff that we do, try to bring those kind of more humanitarian things into this stuff that we do. So we focus on mental health right now. So that's kind of like up my alley here in terms of how I communicate with clients too, because now that I've worked so much in the mental health field with instructors, I can more easily see what people may be experiencing and then be able to say to them, I think you should probably see somebody about this. you know, I recognize that they're like, well, I'm just talking to you. I'm like, oh, I can point it out to you. I can't fix this for you, but I can tell you who can, or recommend that you should see somebody. Now, same thing with health things, because I do body scans, for people. So,
Oh,
so I'll see, cancer or illnesses in people and be able to say, oh, you need to go to a doctor on that one, right?
wow.
Um,
So would you consider yourself a medical intuitive? Is that what that's called?
Yes, it is medical intuitive. So
Mm.
yes, I guess I'm kind of the lucky ones. I'm all of them. I'm a medical intuitive. I'm a clairaudient, clairsentient, and clairvoyant. Um, I feel the things sometimes in my body, like I go, oh man, my back is hurting here, so you must have a pain here, because I'll feel it in my body first, oftentimes. Um, and then I also went to Peru to study to become more of a medium to really be able to communicate with the other side, because people like that stuff.
Mhm.
So I, will work with people to communicate with their, you know, dead relatives or animals. So do some pet communications as well. For a while, I found that yes, my shaman teachers had taught me just to really be open to receive, right? And so I would have a session with somebody, and it was like they somehow their light being taught my light being what it is they do, so that I would walk away with a new gift. I
No
didn't take
way.
theirs. It's like it just taught me somehow to be able to do that. So it used to be really good with um, when people were going to have kids, like, oh, you guys are going to have a baby. Even said to my husband, Dwayne, his niece had just had a baby. And I was like, oh, I hear you, but I don't know. She feels like she's pregnant to me. And he's like, she just had it, like 4 months ago. I'm like, Irish twins. And sure enough,
Wow.
yeah. And also, like marriages and divorces, like sometimes I think celebrities have already announced that they're divorced, because I said something to Dwayne again about he was working with Jennifer Garner at the time. I'm like, oh, it's such a shame about her and um, Scott. And he's like, what? I'm like, well, they're getting divorced. And he's like, no, they're not. And so we looked it up and like, oh, they're not. And then within a month or two, they're announcing, that they are getting divorced. And so like, oh, okay, well, that was definitely a premonition.
Wow. What is your process like when you're reading someone? Do you have like a specific thing that you do? I mean, I you showed that you put the crown on and you do your your
Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah, thing. And
Hmm.
then I take a moment just to tune into the person's energy. That's when I'm going to get the initial download. And then I say a prayer, which unites our energy, and I call in all of my guides. I also have animal guides. So I call them in by name. and then they may bring in some information as well, and then we just start talking. I do like starting with an opening question from somebody. Hey, tell me, can you talk to me about my career as a nurse? Like, okay, great. We have a stepping off point. Then other things are going to come in, but I like having that stepping off point, because I tell people, it's like, well, I can end up talking about, your grandma who's come to visit and she's saying all this stuff when you really want to know, am I going to get this job? So just, let's lead off with your most important thing. And sometimes people will want me to guess a particular thing so that they can believe what I'm going to say, right? And if they come in with that, they come in with this energy of like they're hiding something. And so I will most likely not figure out what they're hiding, because all I can feel is that they're hiding something, right?
Yeah.
So I did have one woman, though, she didn't hang on to it, right? But at the end of the session, we had a great session. Things were going well. And then I was like, oh my, I have to ask you, who is Melissa? I keep hearing the name Melissa, right? And she's like, oh my God, I thought that if you said the name, my sister's name, Melissa, and called her by name, that I would believe everything you said. So I'm like, okay, well, there we go. But
there we go.
Yeah, so like stuff to me, it just comes in, and I'll hear it or I'll feel it or I'll see it, right? I was with a client, and their father had passed away, and I was going to say something. Well, he wants to refer to things as on a wing and a prayer, right? And I was about to say wing and a prayer, but instead I said, on the wings of a dove. And she starts crying because he had been in transition for a while, and dove was their key word that he was really communicating to her from the other side.
Oh.
So it's like, last minute I heard them say dove. So like, oh, now I understand, right? So there'll be things like that happens with somebody that will be the thing that lets them know, right? And, unbeknownst to me, I'm just saying whatever jumps out at me. And that's the thing. Right. If you overanalyze, then you can get in your head, right? And then if I get in my head, I have to stop and I used to sage myself, like, okay, let me get very clean again and just be able to focus in. But trying just to chit chat. So I try to stay on topic with people, and I'll say, changing topics on you completely, la 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 la, because I don't want to forget the thoughts, right?
Yeah,
wings in and out. And I record sessions for people. I had some psychics said, no, you can't record me, and I'm like, I don't care, you can record me. I'll record me and I'll give it to you.
That's great.
I'm not going to be 100%. Just not going to be 100% accurate. But I was on a psychic study, picking out sporting events, because you could tell whether you were right or wrong, right? Who won or not, right? Mm-hmm. So I did that for like a year, weekly. They would send me this stuff, and I would pick out the teams or whatever. And I had an 84% accuracy rate.
Wow.
On it. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny because as you were saying all that stuff, you were answering my questions. I'm like, are you reading my mind? Because I was going to ask you, like, how do you decipher between, imagination, ego versus spirit coming in, like, because like you said, when you get in your head, then you kind of get in your own way. I can imagine, because spirit comes through the imagination, right? To communicate. Yeah,
it does. But because I'm a Capricorn and I like things organized, so dead people talk to me over here. Spirit guides talk to me over here. If it's coming straight from God, it's going to come right down here. And so however I feel it coming, I'll know who's talking to me, or, where it's coming from. Like, we could be talking to the dead person, but then they ask about a certain dead person, and then I don't feel it, and then I'll hear my guides go, oh, well, they're in processing, or they're back in the body, or this, the other. So then I'll tell them, well, I can't reach them. They're back in the body.
So it's pretty clear for you. You have your system worked out already. Yeah.
Got my system worked out. Everything over here is Hawaii and the Pacific. Everything over here is the Bahamas and Europe. So yeah, it's pretty delineated for me. And if I see somebody that I know, then I know that there's something about them that is the same, right? If you're talking about someone that you were asking about a family member, and then I see my brother Kevin, for example, I might go, oh well, there's this family member, did they have, smoke a lot of pot or have some other issues? And they're like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, because it's my brother, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting because my brother has come to visit a couple times, and when he comes to visit, I smell like the rankest weed ever. Because he used to smoke this really this really heavy pot smell. And it would just like start seeping in. I'm like, Kevin's here. Or when
That's
my
so
mom
cool.
comes to visit, she's born the same day or I should say my cat India is born the same day as my mom. And so she's really connected to my mom. And she'll be like playing by herself, but going, and nobody's in the room. I was like, oh, mom's here, or mom's over there in the corner.
Oh, no way. So that's okay, because Rocco said, ask him about the cats. And I'm wondering
Oh,
if that's
yeah.
what you.
Well, that's one of the things about the cats. So the other thing about the cats is my cat Erwin was definitely my familiar, and she passed a year or so ago. But if I was not paying attention to the dead people who were coming, they would go get Erwin, and Erwin would come and she would scratch on the door to get let into my office, and then she would get up on my desk right here next to me and look at me and say, you got a visitor, right? And they would give me the message, whatever it is, and I would give the client the message from the dead person, and then as soon as they were finished, then she would pop off and walk away. So I've got her on a couple different documentaries doing that.
No way.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Right before COVID, the film crew came out. Literally, it was like March 14th. They're filming at my house in 2019 or 2020, and they were trying to reach Eazy-E, and I told them, okay, if he comes and you guys are all setting up and filming and stuff, but they'll come and they're going to be ready. You may not be ready, but they're going to be ready, right? So we need to do this fast because if Erwin comes in, the cat, and she's a big, beautiful Maine Coon, like calico. She was absolutely gorgeous. We're going to have to start because he's going to be like at her. And so we're just about ready to film and stuff. And then Erwin comes in, she pops up on the couch, next to me. I'm like, oh, we have to start. We have to start now. Right. So we're filming. Oh my God, it's all tears and everything because I'm hitting everything because Erwin's, connected me up to Eazy-E and, talking to his, the mother of his daughter and, having this amazing experience. And then afterwards, the executive producer said, I thought you were full of shit when you said the cat would come in. Like, oh my God, this is the stupidest thing we've ever done. And then it's all happening, and the crew they were like, film the cat, film the cat. And a couple of the guys who were on the crew were like, the cat thing. I didn't even know what to say. The cat. But yeah, so she was pretty powerful.
That's wild. That's so cool. What's the wildest reading you've ever done? Like with the craziest validation? Anything that pops out in your head?
Wow. Okay. So I was doing a reading for somebody, and I said to the girl, so you're going to meet this guy, and you're going to meet him in an organic way. That means not the internet or not the apps, right? I feel like you're not on an island. I feel like it's probably like Hawaii because it's on this side of me, right? And you're going to know because his grandmother has a funny name. Like what he calls his grandmother is just a funny name, right? And she's like, okay, like I said, so if you ever meet a guy on an island of Hawaii and he calls a girl, you got to let me know, right? So I forget about this then because I see hundreds of people in a year, right? So I get this random text and she says, Grandma Goo Goo. I'm like, what? Because he told me his grandmother he would call his grandmother a funny name, Grandma Goo Goo. Listen, this actually jumped out at me because this is somebody who like I was doing like a marathon, like 9 people in an evening, kind of like 20 minutes at a time and stuff. And so I did a reading for this woman, and I said, "Oh, you're going to meet this guy on a plane, and you guys are going to get married, and his name is blah blah blah, and she, like Charlie or something like that, and it'll be really fast romance, and you'll get married quickly, and all that." So the host told me afterwards, "Oh, my friend hated you." I was like, "Oh." She goes, "Oh, yeah, I totally did not get her at all, because she's engaged to this guy named Michael, and they're getting married in like 2 months. And so you totally got that just wrong." Right? I'm like, "Oh, okay, well." She meets a guy on a plane when she's going to go to do some stuff for the wedding, calls the wedding off, and marries that guy.
No.
Yeah, so then she called me, my friend then called me back and said, "Oh my God, you'll never guess what happened." It was like the big scandal because, yeah.
Oh my God.
So that was pretty wild. That was pretty wild, yeah. People always ask me, can I read for me? Right?
Oh yeah, can you read for yourself?
Yeah, exactly. So there's some things that do come through for me, like if I like in the Virgin Mary situation, right? But like I'll get a feeling for something, but the timeline for me is more difficult because I'm feeling it, right? So we all think things are going to happen soon, right? Because they're, we're human, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew when I started, after traveling a lot with Rocco, and because we went to different universities to film and meet the campuses and that kind of stuff, that I knew I was going to move. I was going to leave LA, but I knew that the city would be someplace that was in a temporal zone, and I would be there because of a university, and I wanted the university because of all the things that could be, all these things settled in, right? And never imagined that I would be ever moving to Dallas, and came to Dallas for SMU, and it's right in this zone where it gets a little cold, there's a little snow, but it's not really winter, but it's enough of a winter, right? And that I would be back to kind of feeling like I was at home in the South, and all these things like, but I knew that for like 6 or 7 years. So everything I did on my house in LA, I did it with the idea like, oh, we're going to sell this house, so I need to do this, this, and this, but I'm going to do it now so I can enjoy it, right? And when we went to sell our house, I was talking to a real estate friend of mine and agent, and she told me all the stuff we had to do for the house. And because we have more than a legal limit of cats, I'll say, she's like, "Oh, you got to board the cats and you got to do this." I was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare." And now I'm filming here in Dallas. We've found the house. We're putting, our house on the market when I get back there. But I have to be back in Dallas in 30 days to film again, right? So I was like, "Oh my God, we got to sell this house quickly," and, all that kind of stuff, right? So then I suddenly laid down and thought, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" I'm like, "Oh, my neighbors are going to buy the house. So I'm okay. They'll buy it." And so I tell people, "Oh yeah, the people next door, they're going to buy our house. It's no worries. I'm not going to worry about it." So I didn't put the house on the market. I came home. We got home like at 6:30. Came in, pet the cats. We've been gone for 2.5 months. Came in, saw the house, talked to Blanca, our housekeeper. Noticed that the neighbors were out in their front yard. They had family visiting, and I popped my head over and said, "Hey, Dwayne and I are going to be moving to Dallas. You want to buy our house?" And they said, "Yes." And I'm like, "You want to come and see it now?" "Yes." We had a handshake deal in 15 minutes. Turns out the brother that was there visiting had come specifically to look for a house in our neighborhood, and they were, a lovely Armenian family, and so they already had family that lived like 2 doors down from us. So the brother from New York had asked his brother, my neighbor, "Hey, can you talk to any of your neighbors, see if anybody wants to sell?" And he's like, "I don't know if I could do that." And here I am popping over the thing going, "Hey, you want to buy my house?"
David, that's crazy.
I didn't have to board the cats, didn't have to do any of those things. Like, it just took this enormous burden off of us. And in the end, we had like a 3-bedroom house, right? And when you move, they always ask you how many bedrooms, so they could judge the truck, right? Well, we had a 3-bedroom house, but I also had a 3-bedroom garage, right? So we had a shit ton of stuff in our house. We were throwing stuff away like crazy. And at the end, we still had like stuff like left in the house. And they're like, "Oh, don't worry. We have a construction company. We have a disposal company. Anybody wants it, we'll just leave anything there. We'll take care of it."
Wow.
Yeah. So that was pretty amazing.
So you just got that message too, like you were like a download. It's like, oh, the neighbors are gonna buy it. You knew that at one point.
Yes.
Is that certain?
It was that certain. Yeah. Dwayne and I we were watching TV, and Mary had sent me something about trying to get the contract to get the stuff going. And I just went to him and like, "Oh, we don't have to worry about it. The neighbors can buy the house. I'm not going to sign this then."
How cool.
But he believed me because his father had sold a house to a neighbor when they were young. So the idea of like that happening was not out of his world of possibilities. So there wasn't his negativity or fear that it wasn't going to happen to combat my feeling, right? We were both like, "Oh, well, that could happen." And it did.
So cool. I remember what I wanted to ask you now. It was the idea of reincarnation, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking to spirit, if our spirits go on and we go and we live multiple lives, do you notice that sometimes like loved ones will just kind of disappear and like they won't come back because they're already living their next life?
That can happen. Absolutely. Sometimes the souls will decide to travel as a group, right? And they'll wait till they're on the other, everybody's on the other side. Then, okay, we're going to, group outing again, right? And sometimes they come back in the family, right? So I'll see that like, oh, this child here is actually this person here. So that is another interesting story. So I had a friend who I did a reading for her and said, "Oh, guess what? She had 2 sons." I'm like, "Oh, you're going to have a daughter." And she goes, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Yeah, you are." And she goes, "No, I'm not. Steve's clipped. He's we neutered him. That's not happening." I'm like, "Oh no, it is. It's his parents had died in an accident." And I said, "Oh no, it's his mother coming back to be your daughter." And so she's like, "Really, it's not happening because Steve has been taken care of, right?" She calls me 3 months later. She is pregnant. She has a daughter on the mother's birthday.
No.
Yes. I'm like, she was coming back.
Yeah. How did she squeeze through that?
She's like, they had only had the procedure done, like the procedure had only been done for like 3 or 4 months. So it just hadn't finished, it hadn't finished healing. And so that one cell got through,
She was determined.
She was determined to come back to her family. Yeah. So sometimes I'll tell people, "Oh, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be sitting across the room and you're still going to get pregnant. This baby is coming." Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that baby has shown any signs since of like the mother.
I have to ask her if she's a lot like Steve's mom or not. So yeah, that would be interesting.
That is so interesting. Okay, so I was going to ask. Feel free to say no, but I was just wondering if you pick up anything around me, if anything's coming up.
One of the things early on we were talking about home worlds and stuff. I was thinking, well, this isn't your home world, right? So yeah, so that's one of the things. So I'm not necessarily calling you an alien. I'm just calling you a visitor. Okay.
I feel that. I mean, that resonates with me. I would be interested to dive into that and figure out what that means.
Well, then you should look into the Pleiadians, because that's something that jumped out at me about you. Okay. And well, this isn't necessarily good news. I really hope I'm wrong about this. But what I would say to you is like, the next 3 or 4 months, I would really watch out for any potential small car accidents. Sorry.
Okay.
Like it feels like it's one of those little fender bendery type. Somebody stops and you have to, like it's something like that, right? Now, hopefully you'll be on your lookout for that. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you live near the beach communities?
I don't. I live in West Hollywood.
Okay. So I would think around this on one of the like Marina del Mar, Mar Vista, like if you're in that area. So now we're getting more specific for you. So if you decide to go down that area between now and we'll say the end of the summer, okay,
Okay.
to kind of give us a nice stretch. That's when I want you to be paying attention. Okay,
Okay.
especially. So don't know why that warning came through as opposed to something that would be more exciting, right? Um,
Well,
yeah. Except, are you contemplating writing a book, or is it this podcast is your main medium?
yeah, this is it. This is just like a passion project that came to me. Yeah, in an ayahuasca ceremony. I had an experience, and it changed my whole perspective, and I wanted to share it, and I wanted other people to share their experiences to just give people hope. Yeah.
I love that. So I will say this, that I used to do cassettes for people, right? And send them a cassette. And so I had a guy in LA who, he said this was 10, I only did one reading for him. That 10 years later, he calls me and goes, I was moving some stuff around and I found your cassette. I thought I'd just put it in while I was like cleaning and doing stuff. And you talked about me writing a book and getting it on blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, oh, but my book came out last week. So I'm just saying, David, when you do write that book or something, you can say, God damn it, how did that?
Well, we're recording this, so
Right. It could be a collection of recordings.
That's
the best
interesting.
of.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
You bet.
I'm interested in yeah, this whole other world thing. I definitely feel that, and I feel when I'm in ceremony, like ancestors and ancient wisdom coming through. Definitely a presence, and it's interesting that you say that you feel things on different sides, because when I feel their presence, I feel them on my right side, and there's a gold light that comes from behind, and it feels like there's like a light is shining, like someone's shining a light behind me. And it's really interesting how I feel it. But it's and since I've been working with ayahuasca since 2018. Now outside of ceremony, I feel communication. I've learned how to like read signs and symbols and understand, and I have my like daily altar time that I sit with spirit every morning. So I feel like that kind of like charges me and allows me to connect to that side.
I love that. Shoot. When you said the gold light around you, right? I always associate that with God's energy. When something has gold light on it, Christ's energy is pure white to me, and Virgin Mary is the blue light. Okay, blue white light. So I would say some of the stuff that's happening for you is coming directly from God's energy. And the other thing is that whatever your home world is, you've been on other worlds as well, not just this one in your home world. There have been other ones.
Okay. That's so cool.
So think of yourself as a traveler.
I'm a traveler. It's interesting. You also say the white light was Christ energy, because in my mystical experience, where I don't know if you watched my very, very first episode, I'll send it to you. You can watch it afterwards. It was me explaining my mystical experience. Anyways, just to sum it up, Cliff's Notes version, I saw a white light grow from a candle flame in front of me, and that's when I felt God's presence. After the light went back into the flame, I had a single drop of blood fall, and I had a bucket in front of me, like a purge bucket, fall into the bucket, and then I had this instant download of the Christ presence, of death and resurrection, of like the old me dying and the new me being reborn in that moment. And I felt that Christ energy that you were saying, and it was just like I was saying, like instant release of everything being okay, and like, oh my God, okay, I'm okay, and I will always be okay. Like it was The biggest gift that I could ever be given is the awareness that God is real,
Mm-hmm.
that there is more than this physical reality. That is like such a treasure for me, and I am so grateful for that. It's like I will take that over anything, just knowing that. And yeah, I like that. I like that you said that white light is Christ energy. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's how it presents to me. So that's
Yeah,
everything will be as you're on your journey. You're talking about the symbols and the signs and things that will
yeah,
become more clear to you what something means directly. So it's like the
yeah,
shorthand.
yeah. It's like kind of learning a new language, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and being able to interpret that language and what it means.
Hmm.
Yeah. What's your spiritual practice? Are you Buddhist, or are you just kind of
No,
dabbled?
I also spent a couple years studying the Kabbalah and kind of living as a Orthodox Jew because I like to really get into stuff and really feel it. So my daily practice is more about a meditation and connection to spirit, just kind of talking to spirit. And I used to do a lot more like ritual. So around some of the bigger, the full moon, that sort of thing, or the equinox and stuff, I'll do more something a little more formal. Um, but now I feel more, it's like I just take a moment to tune in and, you know, feel my guides or feel my animals that are near me. And really taking the time, even when I'm, playing with the cats, right? That their connection and taking that moment, because anything can be a form of meditation if you allow it to be. So it's about
Mm-hmm.
that freedom of allowing your spirit to go.
I get that. Yeah, that's kind of like where I am too. I love that. What is God to you?
Well, the infinite love, right? Um, that made me think of this though. I was doing a session and communicating with somebody on the other side, and they were brighter, like I could see light on them, right? And it was very different than anything I'd ever seen before. And I was like, oh, you got. So when I'm having conversation with people on the other side or the guides and stuff, it's instantaneous, right? You can barely get the thought out before it's being answered, so it's all happening really quickly. um I was like, oh, you have a lot of light on you, and like, oh yeah, I'm close to God. And I'm like, okay, no. And then I don't know, I'm actually, for you, physical proximity. I am physically in proximity to God's central core energy, and that's God's light you're seeing reflected on me. And I was like, whoa, because I thought God's energy is everywhere. Like, it is, but there's a core that's on the other side that the only way I could describe it is as like being close to the sun, but it wasn't like sunlight. It was a different light.
Whoa.
So I could feel like this infinite love or calm, right, coming from this being.
Yeah.
Um, so and I know it's kind of trite to say, "Oh, God is love" and stuff, but God really is about. And I don't know if you've ever read Conversations with God. The guy wrote those books, but I really believe and have found to be true that everything that we're happening to us on this earth plane is really just an experience. It's neither good nor bad. We as humans will say something is good or bad, but to our soul, it's just an experience. And the way they described it to me is, I was in Griffith Park on a date. There wasn't another one afterwards after this experience because I saw this guy chasing a woman and murdering her, and they were like trapped in this loop, and it was freaked me the fuck out, right? And so I made the mistake of telling the date why I was suddenly like freaked out. um and I was like, what the hell was that about, and they said, we were showing you that everything is connected and it's just an experience. So the murderer and the victim had a contract to have this experience together, and so it was neither good nor bad. It was just this experience. They, however, forgot that part and were trapped between worlds. And so they're like, well, you can help them get out. So that's why you're seeing this. And so how I help souls that are trapped between worlds, it's basically they're always running away from the light, the tunnel of Hebron that comes and opens up, right? So it's always behind them. And it's like they're going like this and they can't see it to go into it. So what I was doing, I'll say to them, no, just turn your head around and go into the light. So it's like seeing them go, oh, there it is. And they go into the light. So that's a freaky experience, right?
That is freaky. It's also like, I don't want to get stuck here.
Yeah.
I want to know how to get into the light. Like, that's weird that could even happen. How does that even happen?
It can happen. It happens with fear of going into light, or fear that they haven't finished something, or there's. I mean, do you know about the Akashic records?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a fear of like completing what you have in your Akashic record, right? We should just automatically be able to do that, but somehow people forget in that moment between the transition between life and death, right? And they just get trapped, and they were on this loop together. So I don't quite know how they got into the loop, but it made me understand a lot more. It also made me understand the concept around abortion and stuff, that decision is not, it's the woman's decision in the physical body to make this decision, but it's also the contract of the person coming in to be aborted.
Mm-hmm.
So that this is just an experience, right? And oftentimes will say to women, oh, did you have abortion or miscarriage? They're like, ooh, yes. I'm like, okay, well, this baby that you have now is actually that one come back. Okay. And most likely, whatever that experience, why you couldn't do it at that time, they understood, right? But now we're good. And now we're back, right? So that doesn't happen, all the time, but when it does, I've had the client go, oh my God, I had that feeling that this was the same soul. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Wow. Wow,
So
that's beautiful.
if we can just take that step back from any experience, right? Like my mom and my brother both were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in the same week that I met my now husband. So one was on a Monday, one was on a Wednesday, one was on a Thursday, right? And I was like, why did this happen to me? How could this be? And they're like, oh, it's just an experience, and and they were like, my guides were like, oh, you'll see your mom, don't worry about that, but you will never see your brother alive again. And so I was like, oh. So when I went back, we were having a kind of a family get together. We were going to a football game, and my brother was in West Virginia. I was coming from California. Flew to Columbus with my sister, and so drove over with my sister the next day, right? Which is much cheaper than where we live in West Virginia. And so I was like, oh, I guess my guide's wrong because I'm going to see my brother today, right? So I get to my mom's house, and she's like, oh, your brother's still asleep downstairs. Can you go get him? I found his body downstairs. I'm like, oh, no, they said I was never, they meant it. I would never see him alive again. And now he's a guide for me.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that kind of wild?
Yeah, that is wild. I mean, when you found him, I just can't imagine. Yeah.
It was weird. But I had always known since the time I was delivering papers when I was like 13 or 14 that I would find a dead body somewhere. There was this weird thing that went through my head, you're going to find a dead body. And I'm like, so it took a long time, but I did. So
being human is so weird, and it's so hard. It's so challenging.
It is.
You're right. I mean, every experience is a neutral experience. We just attach a meaning to every experience, right? But that's the work right there, is like becoming unattached and letting go. And it's not easy.
It's not easy, but you know what? The hard part is, when you really want something and it doesn't happen, to understand that there has to be, or I believe, there's probably a reason that it didn't, right? That's probably benefiting you more, right? So sure, I would love to have become a big screenwriter, big actor, and that kind of stuff. But sometimes I look at the people that I do know, and they can't do the things that I can do because they simply can't get out of their house, or they're so trapped in with the stress of the work and that sort of thing. And then I realized that a lot of what I do for individuals, clients, like, oh, I think that was probably what my true calling is. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I I
oh,
I want to ask you if you have any projects that you want to talk about or plug or anything that you want to share with us.
yeah, geniusacademy.com, Experience Genius Academy. That's what we're doing, our mental health things. But so I do have a movie that I wrote it years ago. It's called Rainbow Harbor, and it's about a little town that pretends to be gay to become the next big gay tourist destination. And so, at its heart, it's a father-son reconciliation story, right? So,
Oh,
father-son love story. And that movie got optioned, and we had Gerard Butler attached for about 2 seconds, just like that. And then he got another movie. Boom, was gone. So the movie that I have had made, one of them, Hansel and Gretel Get Baked, same producers ended up. So it ended up, I got a movie made, right? So I come here to Dallas. I'm kind of just doing my thing, and out of the blue, producers call me back. They're like, you know what? We cannot, it's been 10, 12 years and we cannot get this script out. We think it's a great time for it. And so they re-optioned it, and I'm doing a rewrite to kind of update a bit of information about it, because here we are facing possible recession. And, what we thought would happen after gay marriage, that there wouldn't be any issues with that. But, here we are.
here we are.
And also, they're like, believe it or not, it is a family comedy, even though it has, this particular thing. There's no overt sex. There's no real bad language. There's nothing that they're like, it's a perfect comedy to get right now that people could just go and enjoy. Uh,
That's awesome.
yeah. So, fingers crossed. But I'm also working on it with a friend of mine, Andrew Koopman, who is a director in New York, to convert it into a musical, like a Broadway style musical. Because
Amazing.
I thought it would always be a great musical. And then, so we started kind of like collaborating a little bit on that. And then suddenly it pops up with the movie again. I'm like, well, movie could get that thing, get that Broadway show happening. So then he and I are going
Amazing.
to do that. We're going to start really getting into the scripting of that, and then hopefully do a read in New York in the fall.
Well, I
So
wish you the best on that.
thank you. I appreciate that.
And where can people find you?
PsychicDave.com.
PsychicDave.com. Easy enough.
Easy enough, yes. So I still have an AOL address, if you can believe it, PsychicDave at AOL, because I have had people reach out 20 years later on my AOL account. So I can't get rid of it, because they're like, hey, are you still doing readings? Like, yes, I am.
Wow.
Oh, the other thing is, like, I am doing multi-generational. I used to read for the mom, and now I read the mom and the daughter, and they have kids. So I'm like getting passed on to each generation.
How cool.
It is
How
really
cool.
cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, David,
Awesome.
this has been such a pleasure to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, it has been. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your talent and your laughter. Everything has been so fun. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, we should do this again sometime.
Absolutely. For
Uh,
sure. We'll do it
all right.
again.
All right,
All right.
man. Take care.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
Bye.